But it's not just that it's self-defeating to say that the mind and the brain are the same. There are reasons we know that the mind and the brain are different. And there's several of these in the book. I'm just going to talk quickly about 3 of them. One of them is the molecules in your brain change completely over time, but your thoughts and memories are often the same. Now, there's different time frames on this. You may have heard this, that your molecules change over every 7 years. Some say it's every 15 years. Whether it's 15 or 7 is irrelevant. If your mind were your brain, you wouldn't be able to remember anything earlier than 7 years ago or anything earlier than 15 years ago. But we all do. Why? Because there's a self here that's not just a brain. We're a mind as well. So there's a difference between your brain and your mind. Secondly, your thoughts are immaterial. If I say 2-ton pink elephant, you automatically think of a 2-ton pink elephant. But if we were to crack your skull open right now, would we find a 2-ton pink elephant in there? I could kill you if that were the case, right? I say 2-ton pink elephant, and everyone goes, oh, there's really a 2-ton pink elephant. No, there's not. It's a thought, and the thought is immaterial. Finally, have you heard of the placebo effect? Why is the person not getting the true medicine actually getting better? Because your mind is thinking you are. Your mind is actually affecting your brain rather than the other way around. We know your brain affects your mind, but in this case, the causality is going the other way, that your mind is affecting your brain. Well, but the mind can affect the brain. That's what the placebo effect is showing. In fact, there was a magazine, the New Scientist magazine, I think it was, that came out a couple years ago, and it said 13 things that don't make sense. You know what the number 1 thing was? The placebo effect. Why doesn't it make sense? Because according to them, everything's material. So, of course, according to a materialistic worldview, this doesn't make sense. It's counter-data to their worldview, but they don't want to say their worldview's wrong, so they just say it doesn't make sense. We don't know how this works. That thinking about something could actually physically change you. And think about all the diseases caused by mental stress. Think about that, right? What goes on up here in your mind actually affects your body. So, your mind and your brain are not the same. If your mind and your brain are not the same, materialism's false, which means atheism's false. The atheistic materialism that most atheists subscribe to today. So, let's draw this thing to a close. Atheism cannot explain our ability to reason. Theism can. If atheism is true, our minds are just molecular machines, which means you don't have free will, which means you don't reason, you merely react. Therefore, we shouldn't trust any of our thoughts, including the thought that atheism is true. By the way, if we don't have free will, how can you put anybody in jail? There's no moral responsibility. So, the bottom line is atheism denies or can't explain what's necessary for reason. They can't explain the laws of logic. They can't explain why consciousness and free will exists and why there really is a mind and not just a brain. We can, because this comports nicely with theism. God is the ground of all these immaterial realities. That's why they don't change. That's why they're reliable. That's why we can know things about the real world and learn. In fact, what is the reason we have a mind? To know God, ultimately. That's the goal for us, to be able to know God. And here's the conclusion in the book. The main point of this chapter is not to show that all arguments for atheism fail. The main point of this chapter is to show that all arguments for anything fail if atheism is true. See, it's the universal acid. If atheism is true, we can't know anything one way or the other. Whether atheism is true, Christianity is true, we're just molecular machines. We're just Coke cans fizzing.